Hello. We are going to give everybody a minute to get in before we get started. People are still flowing in, so let's give it another 30 seconds or so. Okay. I just really quick want to clarify a couple of things. So I'm Megan. I'm with Family Matters. Family Matters and the Arc of Illinois are partnering on this series. We're very lucky to have the Arc as partners in so many things at the center. So this week, Annie Bruno and Jared Olson from the Family Advocate Program at the Arc of Illinois are going to be presenting on PUNS and resources that you can tap into while you wait. I think you will absolutely love this presentation. You will learn so much from it. We have heard them do this presentation, and it really presents incredible resources for both professionals and families who are navigating the system. I did want to clarify a couple things. My apologies for the difficulty in figuring out what Zoom link came through and why you weren't getting reminders. It has to do with Zoom being set up as a series this time. So we're trying to figure it out too. We don't know why it sent you a reschedule. It looks like, given the number of folks on it, it all worked out and everybody's been able to figure out where they need to go. We have today, and then we have 2 more Fridays in a row. And then the series is over. Because of Zoom sending that, they tried to tack on another one. So a fifth in the series, there is not a fifth. There's 4 total, today being number 2, next 2 Fridays, 12 to 1 are the last 2 of this series. I hope there's no questions. The other thing I wanted to clarify, if you need professional development credit for the educational setting, specific to being an educator working in the school setting, and you need that particular professional development certification, I'm going to drop a link. ROE9 is managing that for us. I will drop a link in the last few minutes of the class so that you can fill that out. You do have to fill that out in full, as well as complete the survey for them to be able to issue the professional development credit. So please pay attention to that. It's very difficult for us to do that in retrospect. For those of you we didn't do last week because we forgot to drop the link, I'm hoping you've been in touch with Stephanie at ROE9 and that process has been moving because you let me know via email. If you did not let me know via email and you need professional development credit, not certificate of attendance, which we're managing a different way and we'll get those out, professional development credit specifically, please let me know by email so that we can get that process started, because I don't want it to go on too long. We might have trouble accessing it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Annie and Jaron, and I hope you get a lot out of the session today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Megan, and thanks for having us here today. We appreciate the collaboration with Family Matters. This has been a really fun series, and I hope we can keep doing it. Jared and I are going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to kind of dive into the materials here. Just a little bit of housekeeping. As Megan said, she went through all the important things here. I'll just tack on that if you have questions, we would be absolutely happy to answer these, and we'll try to leave a little time at the end to do so. But please put them in the Q&A. That's the box at the bottom of your screen. It's a little bit easier for us to keep track of the questions we've answered if you put it in there. Otherwise, feel free to use the chat for whatever else. All right, Jared and I are from the Family Advocate Program at the Arc of Illinois. My name is Annie Bruno. I'm a Central and Southern Illinois family advocate. I'm local to Champaign-Urbana. Just a little bit about myself here. I have worked at provider agencies as a home-based service facilitator. I've also worked as an independent service coordinator. I supervised a team of 10 over the East Central Illinois counties. I serve on our local transition planning committee, and I was in Best Buddies in college, so I've been around this world for quite some time. And obligatory photo of my dear husband, Josh, but most importantly, the showstoppers on the screen are my 2 beloved pups, Sprout and Lentil. So I'm going to turn it over to Jaren, and she's going to introduce herself and get us started.
Thank you so much, Annie. My name is Jaren Olson, and like Annie, I am a family advocate for Central and Southern Illinois here with the Family Advocate Program at the Arc of Illinois. I have a background in early childhood education, family and community engagement in special education, and also public service. I actually serve as a village trustee in my local community. I'm a Springfield area native. I live just outside of Springfield. And aside from my professional role, I am also the mother of four beautiful children, including a child with a neurodevelopmental disability. I am very passionate about inclusion and accessibility for all, and I'm so happy to be here today. Next slide, please. So, a couple of goals for today. First, we want to kind of start out by understanding the role of the Arc of Illinois and how we support individuals with disabilities and their families. We're going to learn about that PUNS process and how it connects individuals to waiver-funded services. We'll discover additional supports and resources and highlight them that are available while you're waiting for that PUNS selection. And we'll also preview our session coming up on February 20th. Next slide, please. So, a little bit about the Arc of Illinois. We are part of the largest national community-based organization out there advocating for and serving people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families throughout their entire lifespan. Us here at the Arc of Illinois, we are one of 650 chapters nationwide. We're out there, like I said, advocating on the front lines to ensure that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families have the support and services that they need so that they can thrive and be fully engaged within their community. A part of what we do is we work to educate. We offer a wide range of programs and trainings to improve care and inspire a better tomorrow. We advocate for disability rights. And we help connect self-advocates and families with that community of care with other self-advocates and other families as well. Next slide, please. So this is a list of all of the programs that are offered here at the Arc of Illinois. As Annie and I shared, we're here from the Family Advocate Program, and we'll talk a little bit more about our program specifically on the next slide. But the Family Advocate Program and the Family Support Network are led by our lovely director, Ms. Shirley Perez. I do want to kind of highlight a couple of our other programs. We have the Illinois Lifespan Program. And this is a really great program that serves individuals and their families across the lifespan. They offer resources and information, um, anything from transportation resources, special education, anything that you can need. They have a really wonderful resource toolbox on our website that you can go in and type whatever you might be, whatever kind of support you might be needing, and it will pop up with a plethora of different resources that you can look into. We also have the Family to Family Health and Information Center, and this is directed by Dr. Susan Agrawal. And this is a really great program for youth up to age 22 who may have more complex medical needs. So I encourage you to reach out to Susan, and she's just a really great support. All of these will be linked, and we will be sharing our PowerPoint. So we encourage you to visit our website and learn more about our programs. So the Family Advocate Program that Annie and I are here from today, we were established as a pilot program back in 2014 after the Lega's consent decree, and we serve to provide consistent information about waiver services and living options throughout the state. A part of what we do is connect families of loved ones with intellectual and developmental disabilities to other families who may also be seeking funding and services following that selection from the PUNS waitlist. We help families kind of explore creative ways to utilize their waiver funding. We are funded through a grant from the Illinois Department of Human Services, and we work collaboratively with independent service coordination agencies to make sure that we get out that information about all available options for services to adults and their families. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to pass it over to Annie, and she's going to kind of get us started with some brainstorming.
Thanks, Jaren. So before we dive in, we know we're all here to talk about puns. We're going to talk lots of puns things, but we want to kind of um, not get too much in the forest for the trees, whatever the saying is. We want to kind of take a broad bird's eye view first. So some key acronyms. You'll hear folks talk in these acronyms a lot. We're going to do our best not to today, but it's important that you know what they are, because us in the professional world often kind of have these shortcuts. And so sometimes you as a family may not be keen on what that shortcut is. So we want to give you some information here. You can also, again, as Jaren said, we're going to have these slides available. You'll be able to click on this link to see a bunch of more acronyms. But some ones that you'll definitely hear us say today, your ISC, which is your Independent Service Coordination Agency, or your Individual Service Coordinator, the person at that ISC agency. We're going to talk about home-based. We'll really dive in 2 weeks from today into home-based and SCILA. But just to kind of set the scene here, you'll hear us talk about the PASS process, the pre-admission screening, the Division of Developmental Disabilities under the Department of Human Services. So we just want to kind of set the stage for you as we start to think about, bird's eye view, broader kind of things. The puns is a great resource. It's not the only one. We're going to talk about puns today, but we do want to kind of have you be thinking, whether you're a parent or maybe you're here as a professional or maybe you're here as an educator. Um, Start thinking about this young person and picturing their trajectory. Who's going to be a part of that support system? That 14-year-old, are they pretty able to make safe, healthy decisions, or are they going to need immense support during the day and throughout their lifetime to make healthy, safe choices? Will this person be able to have a job in the community? Do we want to push for community-based supported employment? Will they need more intense care needs than that? Are there really significant medical needs that are going to be needing to be addressed? Are they insulin dependent? Things like this that you can start kind of setting the stage for. Again, we hope that if you're here today, you have some connection to folks ages 14 to 22-ish that are in that transition age. Um, and we're going to kind of be setting the scene for what does adulthood look like. So some things to kind of consider. And then we're going to describe these home and community-based Medicaid waiver programs. So here's another acronym, HCBS. An HCBS waiver, it's kind of like as though the federal Medicaid and the state Medicaid kind of come together and they agree that we're both going to pay in to provide additional services and supports that are community-based and living in people's own homes versus institutions. So this home and community-based waivers are designed to keep people out of the institutions in Illinois, which I believe there are still 7 institutions, and designed to keep people in the community out of nursing homes, supporting them within their own environments. Illinois has 9 home and community-based waivers, um, and you could even elongate this to be home and community-based Medicaid waivers, because these services are paid for by Medicaid. So you can see the criteria here. Each one of the 9 are a little different from one another. Today, we're going to dive into these, mostly the very top right corner there, the Adults with Developmental Disabilities waiver. These are the 9. You can see the 9 here throughout Illinois. And again, these are different. If you cross over to Indiana, they'll have different Medicaid waiver programs available. These are Illinois' 9. The top 3 that are in kind of the orange color with the stars, those are tied to the PUNS wait list. So we want to take a second here to delineate puns. People say my puns funding, my puns money, and I get it because if the alternative is if you say what the actual program is, which is the Adults with Developmental Disabilities Home and Community-Based Medicaid Waiver Program. That's a bit of a mouthful. I totally get it. But we want to be clear that the PUNS waitlist or the PUNS database is what ties to these three different waiver programs. Um, and once you're in services, you're actually receiving the Adults with Developmental Disabilities Home and Community-Based Medicaid Waiver Program. So, the top three there, we're not going to talk about the children's waivers too much today, but if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Um, these three waivers are tied or overseen by the Division of Developmental Disability, which is housed within the Department of Human Services. So, like letterheads and whatnot are going to say DHS, which is another acronym you should know. Quickly to mention a couple others here, you may have heard of the Medically Fragile Technology Dependent Waiver, MFTD. That's most commonly for kiddos that have pretty high medical needs. My understanding, I don't work in that waiver, but my understanding is that that's, mostly support within the home, some nursing needs, maybe some funding for a generator or a Hoyer lift, things like that. The Persons with Disabilities Waiver through DRS is another waiver program in Illinois. This is called Home Services, and people often can utilize this within the home to pay a caregiver for the time they're spending supporting them in the home. So this is why we kind of like to pull ourselves out and say, what are some things to consider? If your loved one or your student has really significant medical needs, the MFTD waiver may be a better fit. PUNS is awesome, and these services, the Adults with DD waiver that you can get off of PUNS, is a great service, and many people really like it. But there are other options if they're a better fit. You know your position best. So PUNS. I also kind of joke here that, you know, uh, we use PUNS used to stand for something. It no longer does. So when we talk about acronyms, it's an acronym, but it's also just like a name now because it actually doesn't stand for anything. It used to be called the Prioritization of Urgency of Needs for Services, PUNS. It doesn't stand for that anymore because we do not pick people based on how urgent their needs are. We don't prioritize who is selected off the wait list based on the urgency of their need. Therefore, PUNS doesn't stand for anything. But again, it's easier sometimes to say PUNS versus, the statewide database that registers children or adults who want the developmental disabilities home and community-based waiver. Like, I get it. PUNS is a lot easier, right? So as funding is available, people are selected off of this wait list and they are invited to apply for services. And that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, I'm going to take a second on this slide. This is a biggie. Um, your PUNS criteria, how you can be eligible for getting on the PUNS wait list. And again, I'll mention that there are other service opportunities if your eligibility is in question here, and you're not sure. I mean, always you should be asking. But if you're looking at this slide and you're feeling a little defeated, like, oh gosh, I don't know if we would qualify, um, certainly get in touch with your ISC, which we'll talk about, or you can get in touch with our program. But we also just want to make sure you're aware of your options, which are some of those other waiver programs and other supports. To get enrolled on the PUNS wait list, you have to have an assumption that you qualify, which is based off of some documentation you provide to your independent service coordination agency. And typically they're looking for one of these two things. Either a diagnosis of an intellectual disability or a diagnosis of a related condition. And there's some parameters on each of these, right? So on the left side of your screen, a diagnosis of an intellectual disability. General rule of thumb is that that full scale IQ score of 70 is about that tipping scale. So 70 and below um, is often indicative of an intellectual disability. 70 or above, we do not consider to be an intellectual disability, but I will put a caveat that full scale IQs that score can change sometimes. People test in different ways. And so what the state is really looking for is a consistent full-scale IQ score that is demonstrating intellectual disability. So it may be a little trickier to qualify if you've got one IQ score that's 85 and one IQ score that's 55. The state's gonna kind of say, well, that's a bit of a stumper. We're gonna have to like do some more testing and figure this out. If your loved one has a consistent IQ score that is showing sub-average intellectual functioning, then they're likely to qualify. I will also make a note that this has to be documented and on paper as having manifested before the age of 18. And if it's helpful to think about, the state is wanting to see that the disability occurred during the developmental years of someone's life. And that is why it is a developmental disability. Now, on the right side of your screen, this is where it gets a little trickier. A diagnosis of a related condition, autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, Down syndrome, Fragile X, Rett syndrome. These are considered to be related conditions, but you have to prove that there is a significant impairment in the general intellectual functioning and behavior. So this has to be considered a severe and chronic disability, has to be documented as manifested prior to the age of 22, continued indefinitely, and results in substantial limitations in 3 of these 6 areas. Now, all of that is kind of all that information is provided to your ISC through a variety of ways. You as a family kind of anecdotally telling them about this, assessments they do, assessments you do, assessments the school does, are trying to kind of paint a picture that this person would qualify for PUNS because their related condition of, let's say, autism significantly impairs their day-to-day functioning. Now, also note you can have both. You can be autistic and also have a moderate intellectual disability, or you can have Down syndrome and also have a moderate intellectual disability. What we find is the trickiest is folks who have an autism diagnosis that significantly impacts them, but their IQ score is borderline or 75. The state can look at that with some scrutiny to say, well, they may not qualify here. And I'll also just put a real quick pin in the idea that there's a lot of mental health disorders that impact someone's ability to function. Anxiety, ADHD, depression, these are also not taken really into consideration in the state where they want to see more like, well, how is that person's autism causing the limitations? Because there's other services for folks that have mental health needs. So just want to make this, your case is a unique case, but I want you to kind of know off of the black and white on paper, here's what the diagnoses are and the eligibility requirements. We have a link there as well. And again, this is all in conversation with your independent service coordination agency. They will ultimately be the ones to guide you on this and to answer questions. Okay. And we're going to talk about your ISC in a few, but there are 2 categories on the PUNS waitlist. There is seeking services and there's planning for services. I want to make it really clear that if you are in the planning category, you are not going to be selected to apply for services. The planning category is designed for those that don't currently want or need services. Maybe they will in the future. So if you're 5 or 6 years old, planning makes a lot of sense. Family's healthy, happy, whatever. We can take care of their support needs in a home. Great. If you want or need services, you need to be in the seeking services category. PUNS selections, meaning we're taking you off of this wait list and inviting you to apply for services, those only ever happen if you are on the seeking services category. You have to be in the seeking bucket in order to have the potential of getting services. So that's really important to know, especially as we talk transition age. Absolutely, at 18 years old, you should be in seeking if you want or will need services. I also think it wouldn't hurt at a younger age, 14, 15, to see if that makes sense. And again, this is in conversation with your ISC, but seeking services category tees you up to potentially get services. If you're in the planning category, really what's happening is kind of your information is being sent to the state so that the state can plan for how many people they'll select each year. Okay. So finding your ISC, we've got our office locator there. You can also, visit DHS's website and do the pull down menu. Your ISC is your right-hand person in this process. They are the point of entry. So again, that stands for your Independent Service Coordination Agency or Individual Service Coordinator. You can enroll on the PUNS waitlist as early as 2.5 years old. We encourage you to enroll early. There's no reason not to. We're going to describe kind of Jaren's going to go over the process, but it's a low lift year to year. And it really tees your child up to better be equipped for adulthood if they can make sure that they've been on this PUNS wait list. Um, and this is kind of confusing. I'm going to try to explain it in a clear way. At the age of 18, you start to begin kind of, I like to use the term like earning credits. At the age of 18, in the seeking services category, if you want services, you start to kind of like accrue your time. And the state electing people based on how long they've waited. So I'll be clear again, that does not happen until both the individual is 18 and they are in the seeking services category, which is why it's so important at 18 to get into the seeking services category, because you start beginning to kind of accrue your time. Before 18, enrolling on PUNS, it's still beneficial. It allows the state to do some planning. You may want or need services, or you may benefit from having services. And in the last couple years, the state sort of surprised everyone and they did selection of children, those under 18, and invited them to apply for services. So it doesn't hurt to be on the PUNS wait list. It doesn't hurt to be seeking services because you want or you need them or you'd benefit from having them. And so enrolling on the PUNS early and getting in that door is a really important piece. Okay, I just kind of explained this. Children must be in seeking in order to accumulate their time, earn their credits, accrue their years waiting. In recent months, we've seen a real big improvement on this. The state's now selecting people more like 3.5 years after turning 18 in the seeking services category. It had been averaging about 5 years, so we were seeing most selections happen around age 23. Um, Either way, most people, when they turn 18 and are in seeking, they're not getting a pun selection still for a number of years. And so, as we've seen this transition with school, it's really important that you understand, one, that you can stay in school, until you're 22. But also, like, these adult service programs are probably not kicking in for a couple years, maybe right around school or graduation. That's what we're seeing most now, which is really exciting. And if you are on the PUNS waitlist and you're curious about your estimated time frame for being selected, you can visit that, send an email to those folks. I mentioned that the children's waiver was kind of a nice surprise that happened twice in the last maybe 15 years or so. Um, we always take that very seriously and provide some education. It operates a little bit different than the adult program does, but the thing to note is that these were people who were in the seeking services category, at whatever age they got selected. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jaren for a few.
Thank you so much, Annie. So now we're gonna kind of start about how to prepare for that pun selection and kind of walk through that pre-admission screening process. So when you're preparing for a pun selection, for those selectees age 18 and over, you want to apply for and maintain Medicaid. As Annie shared, these waiver programs are paid for by Medicaid, so that's a really important piece of the puzzle. The process is a little bit different for children's selections, but your independent service coordinator, your ISC, will help kind of guide you through that process. It's very important to keep your school and evaluation records in order and accessible to make sure that you have plenty of copies of those, whether electronically or paper copies. Your IEP documentation, kind of your different evaluations, those records. It's really important to keep those. You'll want to maintain accurate and up-to-date medical records as well. Identify and contact your independent service coordination agency. So you want to make sure that you touch base with them. Um, be prepared to apply for Medicaid and SSI at adulthood if you haven't. This is all kind of a really important piece of that transition planning. You can apply for Medicaid we have the abeillinois.gov website or SSI, and we have the website to apply there. You'll want to consider the need for and all options around guardianship, if that is a good fit for your family. And you'll want to explore supports and services before you'll need them. Next slide, please. So this is a list of the documents that we often see that families will need during this process. Your ISC will likely ask for these, but this isn't inclusive. Sometimes they might need additional documentation as well. You'll want to have that active Medicaid card, Social Security card, maybe a birth certificate, medical records that show the diagnosis and age of onset. As Annie shared, those different criteria, that intellectual disability or developmental disability or related condition. Those school records, very important, your IEPs, any kind of psychological evaluations that you have available, either current or within the past 5 years. Psychiatric evaluations for autistic individuals, maybe an annual physical exam within the past year, a list of medications that the individual uses, and then guardianship paperwork or power of attorney if that's applicable to your family. Your ISC is going to work with you to develop your personal plan, to gather any kind of remaining required paperwork. They're going to let you know what they need. Um, if there's anything additional, and they will help support you with evaluations. If they need different evaluations, they'll help support you to get those as well. Next slide, please.
Are you able to see that, Jaren?
It's just showing me the document list. Oh, okay. So there we go. Oh, you can go back, I think. One.
Are you on the Find Your Way chart?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Is that where we're
Do
good?
you want to be
Okay.
here? Okay.
Sorry. I was thinking that there was another one before this, but that's okay. So this is the Finding Your Way chart. This is a really great visual that our team put together. And it is kind of like a roadmap of the process for the PUNS, of the entire PUNS process. It kind of starts with that initial contact with your independent service coordinator to determine, eligibility and to get on the wait list for adults home and community-based services. Once you work with your independent service coordinator, you get on that wait list. You'll update with your independent service coordinator annually. They'll make sure that they keep your information current. At the age of 18, you can actually contact DHS by email yearly to get an idea of when your loved one might be selected from the PUNS wait list. And there's a good email there that you can email to find that out. And then it kind of starts with your early notification letter. This is your heads up that your loved one is likely to be included in that next selection for waiver services. This is kind of your planning and preparation stage. You'll get a letter from us here at the Arc of Illinois to kind of help you in that process. You'll reach out to your independent service coordinator and, kind of start to plan for services now and explore, different services. And then comes your PUN selection letter. That's your official invitation to apply for waiver services. You'll work with your independent service coordinator to determine clinical eligibility. This really just looks like your independent service coordinator collecting that documentation and just making sure that your loved one is clinically eligible. Once they're found clinically eligible for funding, then you're going to work with your independent service coordinator to begin to build a personal plan. This is looking, this is a meeting with your independent service coordinator where you talk about the goals and the needs of the individual and how the services within this waiver program can kind of best support them. You'll start to um, pick and choose which services you want to move forward with. You'll create that plan, and once it's all finalized, then your independent service coordinator is going to submit that to the state. The state will review it, and once they review it, then you would receive your third and final letter that we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about. But that's your award letter. And then your services can start from the date of that letter. Next slide. So this is just a little bit more of a breakdown of those three key letters that we kind of walked through. Um, that first letter, again, that's your early notification. This can come at any point, but oftentimes we see families receive these early notification letters in December. This is the time to apply for Medicaid if you haven't already. You'll want to begin to kind of prepare those documents for clinical eligibility, that IEP documentation, your medical exams, your identifying, social security card, ID card, etc. You'll want to contact your independent service coordinator, us here at the Family Advocate Program, and really you'll start to become familiar with the services that will be available upon a PUN selection, and you'll research different providers and things of that nature. That second letter, that's your PUN selection letter. This typically comes 6 to 7 months following that early notification. Oftentimes we see this in the summertime. This is your official invitation to apply for services. Again, you'll want to contact your independent service coordinator and you'll begin what's called that pre-admission screening or PASS process. This is where you're determining that clinical eligibility, you're building that personal plan. Now, if you are currently receiving services, maybe through another waiver program, and you're satisfied with those, you can contact your ISC and let them know that you would like to stay in the services that you're currently using. That PUNS selection letter does not expire. So families can choose to move forward in this process at a time that feels right for their family. But if you choose to move forward, you'll make that contact with your ISC. You'll want to have your documentation ready. You'll participate in the discovery process and begin to build that person-centered plan. You'll decide which services you want to move forward with and select your providers. And then once all that is finalized, your ISC is going to submit a packet to DHS for approval. And then there's that third and final letter, the best one of all. That's your award letter. This means that the state has reviewed your application and they've approved. Your services can begin from the effective date on that letter. Your independent service coordination agency is going to begin monitoring your services. They'll visit the home of the individual receiving the services quarterly and as needed. And they'll also assist you in changing or modifying any services or providers along the way. Next slide, please. So there is also another option, which is that emergency and crisis. There's a way to be evaluated for crisis if you meet specific criteria. And if you meet specific criteria, you may be eligible to receive that crisis-based funding. Now, these cases are reviewed very meticulously and can often involve outside entities like the Department of Children and Family Services or maybe the police, etc. Um, if you're pursuing a SILA placement, a community integrated living arrangement placement, the Independent Service Coordination Agency is kind of allowed to expand their search and look statewide for a placement for an individual if they're, looking into that SILA placement. An individual must be experiencing or at risk of experiencing things like abuse. Now, this can be harm done to the individual themselves or potentially aggressive behaviors by the individual that may cause harm to others. It could include maybe an individual experiencing homelessness or living in a shelter, and also, um, an individual who is experiencing or at risk of experiencing neglect. Things like unable to complete tasks, necessary for their daily living. Next slide, please. Alrighty, and I'm going to pass it back on to Annie, and she's going to talk us through some resources that families can kind of tap into while they're waiting for that PUN selection.
Thank you, Jaren. Just a note, we are purposefully not diving in real deep on the services. We are going to do that more in depth 2 weeks from now on February 20th. So we encourage folks to attend if they can to learn more. And we've also got some upcoming events we'll highlight as well. So in case you're unable to do that, but you still want to learn more, there's lots of ways. And I will also just say I saw a lot of stuff coming through the chat. Please make sure if you have questions for us, we get those in the Q&A box. So we will do our best to leave some time. We've got a few minutes here. I'm going to rattle off some resources while you wait. I want to be really clear that this is not an exhaustive list. There are definitely some options and opportunities within your local community, within your church group, your school, your family groups. You have to find them, you have to seek these out, but these are just a touch on some extra resources because we know that this wait list on PUNS and this waiting time frame can be really hard for families. So, resources while you wait. If you're not familiar with respite's a very cool option. I've heard some feedback from families that it can be sometimes challenging to hire for respite care. Um, my understanding from someone who's not ever applied, but heard from families who have, is that the application's pretty uh, simple or manageable, and what they can do is get financially reimbursed as a family member or as someone designated as the respite care provider to be awarded some hours each month for supporting that person. This is great for mom and dad who need to go out to dinner and a date night, or just need to go grocery shopping, or whatever the case may be, to have someone get paid a little bit in the home to support their loved one. And again, I also want to say I saw lots of questions about slides being made available. The slides will be made available. All of these links should work. And so you can have fun going back through and clicking on everything. Support groups, this is hard to do for a statewide presentation. It's hard to know kind of what's going to be the best fit for you. We mentioned iPad Unite, Illinois Parents of Adults with Developmental Disability. This is a Facebook group that's got like thousands of people in it. Um, it's a really nice resource treasure trove. I will be clear that it is focused on adults only, so over 18. But I don't think it hurts as a educator, a service provider, a parent to get involved and get on that Facebook group just to hear the chatter. They share some excellent resources and sort of questions like, hey, my loved one has Medicaid and Medicare, and I just recently had this snag happen, and where would you point me in the right direction? Lots of great information and resource sharing on iPad. Also, I've just found that Facebook, there's some goodness to it. There are people on there that are doing great things. There's lots of good parent groups depending on kind of your area. I am in Champaign-Urbana, so I've got a couple that I know of locally that are really active on Facebook that are just a nice community spot for parents to be able to throw out ideas about, hey, at the IEP, this thing came up. What do you guys think? Really nice stuff. Look within your local community, your YMCA, philanthropic groups like the Junior League or um, I don't know, Key Club. What was the Key Club? Rotary, things like that. I would make sure you look for. The other thing I would mention is disability specific organizations. Again, here in Champaign-Urbana, there's, the Down Syndrome Network. Um, there's the Autism Network. There's, some disability specific organizations often exist, even if it's a statewide, United Cerebral Palsy or something to that effect. Can be a nice way to connect with people. So just some ideas to equip parents to feel a little bit better supported, but also if you're a professional, it's kind of nice to kind of know about these resources so you can provide them to families. And partners with school supports. I mean, we got Family Matters on the call, so we're gonna be giving them a shout out. Family Matters is great. There's just so many good resources there. And if you're struggling with your school district or you as a school district are struggling with how to meet a need, I would encourage you guys to kind of reach out and connect with either Family Matters or the Illinois Guardianship and Advocacy Commission. They recently, in the last couple of years, did a special education initiative. And so my understanding with them, they are working with folks to kind of be a mediator when things have gotten hard between the school district and the family. So some great resources there, and I apologize, I put the East Central Illinois regional office number because I guess I'm a little bit focused on my own area, but these are both statewide. And DRS Home Services, I did mention this at the beginning when I was going over the different waivers. You can see the eligibility criteria here. DRS Home Services um, is a nice alternative to the PUNS funding, the Home and Community-Based Medicaid Waiver Program for adults with developmental disability. It's a nice alternative sometimes if you qualify for both, which you may not. There is no guarantee that you qualify for both. But some of the criteria is somewhat similar, and so you may try giving home services a try. The nice thing I think about DRS is that you can also put in an online kind of referral, and so that can kind of kick things off by just filling out an online form, which is sometimes a little easier and more accessible to folks. Um, if and when you get home services, the amount of support you get is determined by your loved one's needs, and it's typically it's limited to paying a caregiver to provide support within the home. But that's again really nice sometimes when you're needing that extra support as a parent. I will also say that were you to get selected off of PUNS and invited to apply, you cannot have both of these at the same time because there are two of the nine waivers. So you do have to decide which one you want to move forward with. But a lot of folks are able to get some DRS home services while waiting on the PUNS wait list. I'll mention TAP. I worked at a TAP here in Champaign-Urbana. It's a statewide network. There's, a handful of locations. You can see them here. Some are tied to universities, some are standalones. The services change at each one. Some do like direct hands-on ABA therapy. Others provide like a resource room with information and gathering of materials. So if your child has autism or if you're a professional working with a lot of children with autism or folks with autism or autistic folks, um, TAP is a great resource for trainings and information. They have an annual convention, and a good place for families as well. Your SILs, your Centers for Independent Living, SILs, there's 22 of them in Illinois across the state. These are really great if, especially oftentimes, more physical impairments like visual impairment or hearing loss. Sometimes these SILs are really equipped well to kind of, I mean, I know my local one in Urbana, they offer like a sign language class to parents who are raising a hard of hearing child. Things like that. They also help coordinate workers sometimes to provide those in-home services. Um, your local Center for Independent Living may be a very helpful resource if you can find one near you. And a really cool thing I think is that they are comprised of over 51% of individuals with disabilities staffing these agencies. CRSA is a great resource if your loved one or your student or you're an educator has high behavioral needs or emotional disturbances. They kind of provide a great kind of cohesive connector where they're kind of working together on the team to help resolve and connect you to services. So CRSA is great if you can get in, if you have a CRSA staff, um, getting the family connected to them if there's disputes or if there's, misaligned priorities, specifically for those with severe emotional disturbances or behavior disorders in Illinois. As again, a statewide agency. IATP is an awesome resource. We were just there a few weeks ago. Gosh, what was that? Early January. Um, Illinois Assistive Technology Program is a really cool resource. It's housed in Springfield, but they're statewide as well. And if you haven't been, they have a very cool uh, whole showroom that you can tour that's got just fascinating assistive technology, adaptive equipment type of materials, alternative communication. We were there, they were using a very large 3D printer to create like an adaptable chess game with chess pieces. It was very cool. It's just a really neat program. And from my understanding, you can borrow different devices as well. So if your loved one, you want to see if like having an iPad with a communication device is going to help, you may be able to like borrow it for free and try that out before making that investment. We're going to mention SIBs just because having your siblings in the family, it's an important piece to remember that siblings are also affected. SIBS is kind of connected with the ARC, so we like to shout them out, but it's a really great resource if you are, again, an educator or a family that's looking to support the sibling of the person with a disability. They offer things like SIB shops, which are kind of get-togethers with all the siblings that are sort of facilitated and overseen. So cool opportunities there, again, if siblings or the family are needing support. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. I just threw out some resources here for social and recreational. Most areas of the state, you've got some sort of Special Olympics program as well as a Best Buddies program. These are great opportunities to get people connected socially and recreationally and involved in their community. Um, so, so some nice options there to explore. I know I kind of went through that quick, but I want to save some time for questions. So Jaren's going to wrap us up and talk about some upcoming events, and then we will have whatever time we have left and we'll go over questions.
Thank you so much, Annie. So, as Annie shared, we're going to be having another session on February 20th where we're really going to take kind of a deep dive into um, this waiver program, the DD waiver program, and we'll break down, what it looks like in those different options in your home-based services or maybe that community integrated living arrangement and kind of help you explore what services are available and what that can kind of look like for your family. So come back in on the 20th, come back next week for Family Matters too, and then come back on the 20th for our session to dive a little deeper in that. Next slide, please. So we also have monthly webinars called Know Your Options. We offer these twice a month, once in the afternoon and once in the evening. And this is a really great kind of broader, more detailed look at the waiver program and all of your options and for services within the waiver program. We explore those support options, the role of your ISC, kind of review the steps you need to take, as you prepare for a PUN selection and talk through kind of common concerns and barriers. It's free, so we encourage you to join us for one of those webinars as well. Annie and I are going to be on the road, heading to Centralia next week. The Arc of Illinois is a part of the IDD System Redesign Coalition, and we are meeting with individuals with disabilities and family members and professionals um, to host these listening sessions so that we can learn about your experiences with the disability program, the service system, and share ideas to help shape the future of the disability service system within the state. So Annie and I will be at the Centralia Public Library next Wednesday, February 11th, and we would encourage you to join us or share with somebody that you think might enjoy that opportunity. Next
And I
slide,
would
please.
also just say ignore that RSVP deadline. If you would like to join, there is still plenty of time. You're welcome to register.
Absolutely. Alrighty, so that wraps us up. We have Annie's contact information here and my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. We also have a link here for our survey. If you could fill out the survey, we value your feedback, and this helps kind of for the funding for our program. And with that, we'll go ahead and switch on over to some questions.
And we'll also put our emails in the chat as well as the survey. Um, oh, uh, maybe Megan can put our emails in the chat. I don't have the ability to do so, but either way, you'll be hearing from us. So we have a lot of questions, Jaren. We're willing to stay a few minutes afterward, but I'm gonna start in the Q&A box because there's just a lot. And so I'm going to start with answering one about do they no longer do urgent needs? I think I kind of answered that. The PUNS wait list no longer picks you based off of how urgent your need is. They pick you based off how long you've waited after the age of 18 in the seeking services category. So there was a couple in there. And I guess I'm also going to take a point to say, yes, the slides are going to be sent. Yes, this is being recorded. We can't put every single link that we have in our slides in the chat right now, so please just go back and go through. They should all be accurate and active, and if nothing else, you can always email us. So we're happy to get that to you. And I see Megan, thank you very much. Megan put our emails in the chat as well, so um, feel free to reach on out. Okay, someone said so waiting from age 5 until 10 is not counted. If it's not correct, your time on the clock starts ticking after the age of 18 in the seeking services category.
It looks like we had another question that asked if your child's IQ is higher than the PUNS list criteria, like what if your child's IQ is higher than that 70 criteria? Can you
Yeah,
still qualify?
it's not a it's not gonna it's not a shoe-in. It's not automatic. You would have to work with your ISC, outline the support needs that your child has. It's a matter of how many IQ scores have they gotten over their developmental years. And is there consistency in that? If consistently your child has tested at an 85 IQ 6 times in a row over the course of their 0 to 18 years, they do not have an intellectual disability as defined by this waiver. So it's likely there's going to be some pushback on if they would qualify. I can't answer that question. You have to talk to your ISC. They will review all your paperwork in full. They'll talk about all the functional limitations and they will work with you to see if you're eligible.
We also had another question about what would somebody or what resources or what would somebody look into if the individual had a traumatic brain injury since the age of 8?
Yeah,
What
it's
would
an
you
interesting
recommend doing?
question. I've certainly worked with people that have traumatic brain injury diagnoses, and I think it's a matter of if this resulted in intellectual impairment. I think it can be considered a related condition, but from my little work of it, oftentimes it manifests with some mental health difficulties, and so it's parsing that out. Absolutely, by default, talk with your ISC. It does not hurt to get in touch with them early at the age of 8, and and they're going to be the ones that can answer that fully for you.
And I see another one here that says, if you are in that seeking services category and you don't feel that you need the services at the time they're pulled, would that impact you negatively? And I can kind of answer that. As we talked about earlier in the presentation, that PUNS selection letter does not expire. So if you receive that selection letter, you can choose to move forward with that at a time that works best for your family. So if you're currently receiving other services, maybe through a different waiver program, or you just feel like, you're not ready to kind of move forward with those services, you absolutely can choose not to. You still want to touch base with your independent service coordinator just to kind of keep on their radar, let them know that you've received the selection letter, you're going to kind of stay where you're at, just so that they, keep those lines of communication open. Um, but you can choose to move forward at a time that works best for you. Do you have anything to add to that, Annie?
Nope, I think you said that perfectly. Asking about if there's a limitation of how long you can receive services, no. As per right now, the way the services are working, the way the waivers are set up in Illinois, they are considered to be lifelong. And so once you get into services and you've got that award letter, you're receiving them day to day, month to month, year to year.
Thank you, Annie. It looks like we had another question about the child's PUNS waiver. So if an individual is on that child's PUNS waiver, do they automatically kind of move over to the adults or the adults waiver at age 18? And would they need to communicate with their ISC to change that status?
The good question. I will say nothing is ever automatic. There's always some paperwork involved. But so I'm gonna rephrase that if your child was awarded the children and young adult waiver at 18 or at 22, and we can talk about this. I saw another question in here about that. They have the right to move into the adult waiver, but it does require paperwork, and you have to tell your ISC, and your ISC has to be the one to do it. So you really need to be really communicative with your ISC. And I'll explain that briefly now because I think this was another question. The move from children and young adult waiver to adult waiver uh, is dependent on whether or not the person is in school. So some people move at the age of 18 because they've graduated. Other people move at 22 because they've stayed in school for those additional 4 years. So that's when you switch to the adult waiver, is whether or not you're in the school system.
Thank you so much, Annie. We had another question that asked, can you receive Medicare and Medicaid at the same time? Can you have that dual enrollment?
You sure can. And the important piece here, again, is that you have to receive Medicaid in order to receive these services because they're paid for by Medicaid. Medicaid wraps around typically, and Medicaid's considered to be the payer of last resort. So, Medicaid, you can have private insurance, Medicare, and Medicaid. But you have to have Medicaid. So it's wrapping around and it's picking up the last kind of bills and whatnot. But you have to have Medicaid in place, in addition to maybe whatever else you have.
I'm glad you said that, Annie, because I did see a couple of questions also in the chat about can you have private insurance? So you absolutely can continue to have that private insurance. Medicaid would kind of be that on that back end there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another question we had was talking about that psychological evaluation within 5 years. They were wondering if that was within 5 years of enrolling on the PUNS wait list or 5 years of being selected. And what kind of would you recommend the best practice for schools like to complete these evaluations?
Well, I applaud this person asking if they're coming from a school because thank you for teeing up adult services for your students. The psychological evaluation that we referenced that's required uh, is what we were talking about is when you're PUN selected and applying for services and moving through into the programming. That has to be updated within 5 years. To enroll on the PUNS wait list, my understanding, and I don't enroll people right now, so I'm not, talk with your ISC for sure, but you'll need documentation and demonstration that the person has a reasonable basis that they have this disability. Oftentimes, that comes in the form of a psych eval. It could also be medical notes that say, this person's diagnosed with XYZ, but your ISC may have very specific things they're looking for. The one that we were referencing that has to be within the most current 5 years, we were specifically talking about when you go to apply for services. As a school district, I would show immense gratitude to any school district that's willing and able to keep updated psych evals, especially for that 18 to 22 range. Um, as a former ISC and someone who works in the system still, we have people that get PUN selected at, 22 or 23. Their school maybe never did a psych eval for them. The ISC agency will support you. They'll get you connected to their psychologist, they'll make a referral, they'll pay for the exam. But it often ends up taking many additional months, just realistically, between the time the referral's made, the evaluation's done, that's a 2 hour meeting, 3 hour meeting, the report is written up. It ends up just on the back end really causing families to have to wait a lot longer. So whatever the school can do to work with their ISC, one, I would say the school should absolutely, if they can, make sure that what they're doing within their psych evals is what the state's going to need. Because I've also had schools think they're well intentioned, but then they don't complete all the testing that's required, and then they can't use it anyway. So I would say connect with your ISC.
Thank you so much, Annie. We had another individual ask about if they're already receiving the children's waiver, and then they turn 18, do they need to get into that seeking services, and gather and go through that whole process?
Yeah, and I realized as I answered the other question about the children's waiver that I failed to mention that you do not require a second pun selection. As I said, nothing is automatic, but once you are in the children's waiver, you're on the road to the adult waiver and there's no deviating. So you will switch with the support of your ISC and through paperwork, um, but you do not have to be selected a second time.
Thank you, Annie. We had an individual that was talking about communicating with their ISC, about moving from that seeking services category, um, from the planning services into that seeking services, but we're told that they can only do that if they were in crisis. What do you recommend? Do you have a recommendation for them?
I recommend one, you're welcome to get in touch with either of us. Part of what we do is help to advocate, especially if you're having some concerns about maybe not feeling heard by your ISC. Ultimately, your ISCs are the your right-hand person and they are the ones to enroll you. Um, I would make sure as you have conversations with them that you're really honest and open about exactly what's happening within your family dynamic. That PUNS update form, which is available online, has criteria that you qualify to be in seeking for. And I haven't used it for years, so forgive me, but I think it's something like um, I would need services if something happened to my caregiver, or my caregiver's unable to work outside the home because they're providing for me in the home. So things like that. So start to kind of be thinking about what criteria would qualify you for seeking and really your ISC should help you feel heard and you do not have to be in an emergency situation to get into seeking. Everybody at 18 should be in seeking. So if you're getting immense pushback on that, I would say feel free to reach out to our program as well.
Thank you, Annie. We had another kind of question about like, how does somebody know, um, how do they decide if it's better to keep their child on, their current waiver or maybe switch to the DD waiver, to this waiver program?
It's a personal decision, and we can all say we're grateful now that the pun selection letters do not expire. That was not always the case, folks. Just in the last couple years, they've announced that the pun selection letters don't expire. So you can make that decision in 15 more years if you want. It's a personal decision. Both, like most people have the DRS Home Services waiver and compare that to this, waiver we talked about today. The main difference being that the DRS Home Services waiver are paying for someone to support you within your home, your caregiver. This waiver that we talked about today, it's kind of got a broader variety of services, but not necessarily sometimes as much support. So it really depends. It's a personal decision. Um, I will be honest with you that what we're going to talk about some more next time and what we talked about today with getting into services, it can take a long time to get into this funding. So even if you're a little hesitant, know that it could take 6 months or a year before you're sitting from that PUN selection letter and into services. So nothing happens overnight. You've got time to think about it.
And I think that kind of leads into some other questions that we had gotten about that DORS waiver, the DRS waiver. You know, can get that DRS waiver while they're waiting for a PUN selection, and what happens once they would get the PUN selection? Do they have to uh, no longer utilize that DORS waiver?
Yeah, and the short answer is you can use it up until the day you switch. Now, um, again, that you'd have to be immensely communicative with your ISC. But from my understanding, you're in the doors waiver while you wait on PUNs and the process of getting into services. You can't have both waivers at the same time. So the day you get awarded your new waiver, your other one goes away. Now, realistically, there's probably more of a couple weeks of cushion there where you probably want to end services, nicely tie the knots, and say goodbye to DRS and then get your home based up and running or your DDD waiver services up and running. Um, but up until you can continue to have it as you pursue these services.
We also had a question that was asking about those listening sessions that we're
Mm.
hosting, and they were asking where can they find out more information about listening sessions in other areas?
Yes, let me see if I can put the link in the. Oh, I can't put the link in the chat. Sorry, I still don't have access. If Megan wants to put the link in the chat, or we can send this out afterward. If you go to our Arc of Illinois website, we've got upcoming events. There's a pull down page on our main website that has upcoming events, and it also has a part about focus on the future, which is our new kind of terminology we're using. So you can find the list there. Um, and we're all over. We've got that one in Centralia, just Jaren and I, but our colleagues in Chicago and Southern, we're having them statewide, all over the place. So you can definitely check out one that's closer to you.
Thank you, Annie.
And I would say,
Um,
Jaren, it's 1:12. I'd say maybe we'll take two or three more questions.
that sounds great. This one was asking about SSI and Medicaid. So if an individual is turning 18, can they apply on their 18th birthday, or do they need to wait until the following month? And I would just kind of lead by saying you can apply for SSI and Medicaid at any point, at any age. You don't have to wait until the individual is 18 to apply for those things. But certainly you want to apply once they turn 18 so that the Medicaid can pay for the home community-based waiver and that SSI can kind of help support that additional funding.
Yeah, and if you're applying for Medicaid when they're under 18, parental income is included.
Mhm.
But if you're applying for Medicaid after the individual turns 18, they're considered their own household, so it's on their record as an 18-year-old. Um, let's take one or two more.
Let's see here. So if your family member is 18, uh, and they don't have or need guardianship, can the parent still be the one to apply for the PUNS list on behalf of that family member?
Yeah, what usually will happen is your ISC agency is going to request that they get a release of information signed. so that the person with the disability gives permission for mom or dad or whoever to speak to different parties on their behalf. That's going to be a very common thing you'll encounter with all agencies that you work with, that if you are not the legal guardian, you will have to get your loved ones express permission to speak on their behalf.
Thank you so much.
Someone asks about describing the steps in initiating the PUNS process. What's the role of a couple different acronyms here? So again, for families, the initiating of the PUNS process is that you're reaching out to your independent service coordination agency and you're asking to be enrolled. They'll gather some paperwork about your loved one, determine if they assume and think that they'll qualify, and they'll enroll you on the PUNS wait list. These other terms that this person used, the ISSA and the SDA, those are all things that we will address on the 20th as they pertain to the actual waiver services once you're in the programming. That's when those folks become more of a part of the party.
Thank you, Annie. We did have one individual ask a question about a individual who would be a 55-year-old who's never received services but has aging caregivers. What would your recommendation be for them?
My recommendation would be absolutely get on the PUNS wait list, because you're looking at probably a 4 to 5 year wait of waiting. But in doing so and speaking with your ISC agency, um, I would have some contingency plans in place in case aging caregivers, something happens and there's an emergency. So, what I would recommend is when you go to enroll on PUNS, you have a really honest conversation with your ISC and maybe you push a little bit to see if there's some services you could get now. Maybe there's respite, maybe there's DRS programming, but like what's the plan for an emergency and then would that qualify for crisis funding? Either way, start that wait on that list now because it very well may take 4 or 5 years and tee that person up so that in 4 or 5 more years they can get some good services that'll be with them for their lifetime.
Thank you so much, Annie. We also had another question that was asking about, they were talking about the high cost of, different evaluations that might be needed, and they were wondering, if the ISC can help to pay for those.
That's a very good question. Your psych evals are certainly not very cheap. I see this person says about $400. I think it's more like $3,000 from from at least my area that I live. It can be prohibitively expensive. So, if you are selected off of the PUNS wait list and you've received your official invitation to apply, part of your ISC's job is to get you connected to a psych eval, a psychologist that's going to sit down with you. They're contracted with the ISC. There's a lot of familiarity there. And your ISC agency will pay for you to complete a psych eval. They will take care of the cost. But that's typically only if you are PUNS selected. Again, if you're in a school district still that's willing to do it, it's great to kind of push for that. I would advise any families on the call that if your school says like, I don't think we need to do IQ testing, we just did it 10 years ago. You say, well, could we do it again? Let's get some documentation in place. So don't waive things if they're offered to you. Take advantage if you can. And finally, Jaren, I think kind of I'll wrap us up with a couple comments from teachers, and I appreciate educators being on the call. Um, Shameless plug for Jaren and I is that we love to do presentations. And so like if your school district wants a PUNS training so that your educators understand this of what we talked about today, we'd be absolutely happy to offer more custom presentations and gatherings. But I think most importantly, ISB requires a little bit of PUNS knowledge, which I think is great. But if you feel like you want to be more equipped with like an elevator speech to feel comfortable about PUNS, we would absolutely be happy to help. And I would educate educators to have that kind of little bit of background knowledge. So not only are you doing what you have to with your IEP, it says I have to mention PUNS, but you're able to kind of do the follow-up question to the family, and this is why it's important, and this is what services you can get, and this is how it tees them up into adulthood. So, um, props to any educators that are on the call. We're grateful you're here. And we'll wrap us up now. We appreciate everyone for being here. We hope to see you on the 20th, and the 13th. Do I have my dates right? Yes, the 13th and the 20th. Next Friday and the Friday after, not the 27th, just the 13th and the 20th. And thank you, Megan and Family Matters, for hosting us.
Thank you. I want to two
Thank you
quick
so
things,
much.
Annie.
Yes, please.
The professional development credit for educators. I've popped in the chat 3 times. You'll see it. You need to fill that out if you want professional development credit for today. And then that will happen again the next 2 weeks. The other thing that I just wanted to point out, because I'm worried that I got lost in the chat, because my goodness, there were a lot of happenings in the chat today. I have no idea how I locked you out of the chat, but I clearly did. In that somebody asked who is going to connect us to our ISC. And I was hoping you all could address the fact that that's a family driven connection so that nobody is waiting for somebody to call.
No one's connecting you to your ISC. It is completely on you to find out who that is and to reach out and to make some phone calls. Do not call one time and leave one voicemail and then think someone surely will be calling me. You got to be persistent and you have to initiate. And so that office locator will get you to the exact main phone line you'll need to call, but you may need to call a few times.
Thank you. Thank you both. This is hearing it every time I learn more.
Thank you, Megan. And we
Mm.
apologize. We had so many questions we didn't get to everyone's, but our emails are in the chat. You'll get connected to us some way, somehow. We appreciate you being here, and we hope to see you for the next 2 weeks.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.